The context of this discussion will pertain to digital art and ideas in art. I feel that we all understand that walking into a museum and having a painting is most definitely stealing. But the efficacy of copying and using other people's digital art and ideas seems to be an area of confusion for many. I will not be talking about this from a legal perspective, but rather from a moral and philosophical point of view. I believe that it is far more practical, since you don't have to be a legislature to adopt and use this kind of principle. A quick note, I know that I have been away for a long time and that this is an unusual video, but I do plan to get back to making gaming related content and to upload on a more regular basis. Thanks for understanding. Now, let's get into this. Discerning right from wrong. What makes something morally wrong? There's actually a surprisingly simple answer. To violate this principle, treat others with the same love, care, and respect that you treat yourself with. Doing what is right is really that simple, or at least it would be if it wasn't for all the deception in the world. That and the fact that we're all naturally selfish. Another way to think about the golden rule is that you should further yourself in a way that also betters the other people around you. It really just means aiming for what we would call a win-win situation. A problem only arises when an individual or group reaps benefits at the expense of other people's well-being. Doing so knowingly and willingly is the ultimate transgression. If a country makes any laws, it should be in support of the golden rule, else unspeakable travesty will be the inevitable result. Since we're having a discussion about the ethics of copying another person's work, we will first need to sort out exactly what it means to copy someone. We must make a clear distinction between what is and isn't copying before we can decide whether it is morally acceptable. The most obvious example of what would be called copying is the classic repost. The term repost simply describes when someone copies the entirety of someone else's piece and posts it on their own page. Is that copying? Most definitely yes. If that isn't copying, then nothing is. Cloning a work is indisputably copying. Remember, we'll get to the ethics of such actions later, but for now we can note that copying a work in its entirety is copying another person's work. On the other end of the spectrum, we have to ask, is taking inspiration from other people's work copying? If it is, then every artist is a copycat. Obviously, taking inspiration can't be copying, except that it actually is if you analyze any work enough. There is always similarity between different artists' work to some degree, but if we count replicating any aspect of any work that you see as copying, then everything is copying. It really doesn't make sense to equivalate taking inspiration with straight up cloning an entire work. This begs the question, is it even possible to make art without copying in some form? The simple answer is no. If you write a book, you use all the words that you've learned by repeating those who came before you. You spell words and structure sentences like the people around you. You print in a familiar font and use countless other conventions as guidelines. If you're an artist, you use the same shapes as everyone else to create images of the same things that have been the subjects of artists for thousands of years. If you are a musician, you use the same 13 notes as everyone else and compose using the same rhythms and chords that constitute countless other songs. So what do we mean when we shout accusations like, "They copied my art"? First, it arises from personal pride and the desire to be the best, look good, and be loved by everyone. Beyond that, it has more to do with what the artist didn't do than with what they did. Artists who are accused of plagiarism, more often than not, did not add anything meaningful to the ideas that they used. Indeed, I believe that it is this reluctance of a person to contribute their own efforts in further developing the ideas within existing art that we so despise as filthy and lazy. Even fan artists are acclaimed when they are honest about their work and they transform the original ideas into something significantly different. Therefore, in this discussion, when I say copy, I am referring to when someone only copies without adding or transforming the original work's ideas through their own effort. Now that we've defined copying as mere recreation without contributing anything meaningful to the source's ideas, that raises yet another sticky question. What is considered a meaningful contribution? Simply put, it means that the artist took ideas from outside the source and integrated them into the main concept of the original art piece. Ironically, this is accomplished by the artist taking the ideas that they can perceive from the art they are drawing inspiration from, integrating those ideas into their own understanding, and then creating their own piece from their new knowledge. This means that while it's not so important what means they use, the artist has to perform the recreation in their own mind and with their own skill. For a work of art to be original, it must be able to stand in its own right without needing other art to give it its meaning. True art draws its meaning from the pure experiences of life. This means that an art piece cannot rely on observers being familiar with another piece that served as its inspiration. Else, the new piece functions as a mere commentary on the old piece, and not an original work of art. Fan art is an excellent example of this. People get excited when they see fan art, mostly because it references another person's work, which is far more popular. Without its association with the celebrity status work, fan art doesn't make any sense, and certainly will not enamor people in the way that we can clearly see that it does. Therefore, it is fair to say that fan art tends to be mostly commentary on actual art. I say mostly because fan art is inherently unique to some degree, and there is a minority of pieces that do add substantial ideas and qualities to their source material. All this to say that art reflects life, and not just other art. It really isn't as difficult to discern as it would seem, though. People can tell when a work is uninspired, and you can see this by the disdainful way they speak of such pieces. If anything, people tend to be too critical. So what is wrong with copying? A common explanation is that people steal other people's ideas. But that begs the question, who owns an idea? Can you even own an idea at all? The short answer is no. Ideas own people. As crazy as it sounds, it's true. People still try to own ideas, though. Trade secrets are one example. A trade secret is when a person or corporation uses a certain ingredient or technique that they don't allow anyone else to know about. This practice becomes quite comical when two different people or corporations independently come up with the same secret, and both believe that they are the exclusive creators and owners of the idea. This type of coincidence happens all the time. For example, the US and Germany both independently invented the film projector, and in the same year no less. No idea is unique to any one person, and so no one can claim ownership of an idea. To further understand the true impossibility of owning an idea, let's talk about what ownership actually is. To own something means to have the exclusive right to use that thing. If you have a physical possession, let's say a car, you alone have that car. If someone else wants to drive your car, they must take it away from you. Likewise, when you drive your car, you make it impossible for anyone else to drive it. This is the basis of ownership, the fact that physical possessions can be held and used by only one person at a time. Ideas are not physical, and so they can be used by an unlimited number of people simultaneously without those people affecting each other. In fact, the mere articulation of an idea is enough to write it into the minds of any and everyone who is paying attention. These people feel compelled to make the idea a reality. It takes hold on whoever learns it, and in this way possesses people. Moral confusion begins when we fail to distinguish between ideas, actual works of art, and credit for the creation of those works. First of all, a work of art contains many ideas, all of which originated elsewhere. Second, digital art is purely informational and cannot be stolen. When we say that someone stole a digital work of art, what we really mean is that they stole credit for artwork that they did not actually create. While I'm sure we all agree that stealing credit is wrong, I know that it is not inherently self-evident that all digital art theft is merely a matter of false credit. To understand how this can be, we will need to talk about the two different kinds of communication. Explicit communication is when an idea is stated directly so that it is clear regardless of what the outward appearances of the situation may seem to suggest. Implicit communication is based upon the shared expectations within a society. For example, if you go online, you can find many people's social media pages which are full of works of art. The person posting the works almost never explicitly specifies who made them. If you were to ask them, they would reply, "I did, of course. That's why I posted them on my page." In fact, it is common knowledge that posting unlabeled art on your social media page is a way to implicitly communicate that you created it. As I'm sure that you can already see, such power can be abused. If someone posts unlabeled art to their page that they did not create, they are engaging in implicit miscommunication. They are using subtle means to lie about the authorship of the art. It is this deceit that is at the root of the issue. Oh, and don't tell me that someone who knows how to copy things from the internet and is familiar with how to use social media doesn't understand the meaning of posting to their own page. To post something on one's own page is to put it under one's own name, and anyone old enough to read and write knows what putting your name on something means. So if they say they don't know better, they're merely playing the fool. Implicit deception tends to be harder to pin down, but is just as real as outright lies. Now, think of what it would be like to try to sell someone else's art while clearly communicating to your customers who the actual creator of the art is, that you copied their art without consent, and that you are keeping all of the profit. It wouldn't work so well, would it? It's the type of information that you'd want to put in the fine print, in hopes that no one would actually read it. It may be surprising then to learn that it is in fact possible to copy someone else's work without stealing credit. Some works are so well known that reposting them will not be understood as claiming authorship. Internet meme culture has developed around the idea of recycled content. Memes are easily identified as repurposed images and videos because they have become a social standard and they don't pretend to be anything that they're not. By using the golden rule, we can determine that the only time when copying is wrong is when it harms ourselves or others. When someone lies to steal credit for an artist's work, they initially harm the artist's reputation to improve their own. And then, when the truth is inevitably found out, they ruin their own reputation. The bridges are burned and the damage is done, and everyone is worse off as a consequence. This is always what happens when someone tries to gain profit at the expense of others' well-being. One more way to falsify credit is by misrepresentation. For an artist, this can be done by creating a piece that appears to be the work of another artist, or by simply modifying or recontextualizing the other artist's piece. This becomes especially problematic when the faker asserts values upon the other artist which they do not actually hold to. This misrepresentation can also pressure the artist to align their views with the propaganda that is being spread in their name. So in conclusion, copying is alright when it's done in an honest and respectful way. In the end, the moral dilemma comes down to communication. There are also copyright and patent laws to consider, but that's just a matter of being civilly lawful. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video useful or at least interesting. If you did enjoy it, you can let me know by pressing the like button. My next video will be either a tutorial for Team Fortress 2 or Mario Maker 2. If you want to vote, feel free to leave your suggestion in the comments. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.